Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, sort of co-hosted between Lead Onion and Growth Genie. By ways of introduction, my name is Michael Carlin. I'm the founder and CEO of Lead Onion, and I'd like to welcome today Michael Hanson from the Growth Genie, CEO and founder. The webinar this afternoon is going to focus primarily on cadences and really the synergies between ourselves and Growth Genie in relation to how to build sales cadences that resonate and convert. Just the next slide, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind. So what we're going to try and cover this afternoon, guys, is really for any effective sales engagement program. There are three core components. We need, quality data to be able to seed onto cadences. You need a quality cadence that resonates, has solid content, and gets people to engage over the life cycle of the cadence. And then the third component of that is the automation in relation to, if you've got the data and you've got the cadence, it's well built, well structured, engaging, then you need the ability to be able to automate that and do it at scale. So the perfect fit between ourselves and Michael and Growth Genie is that, we at Lead Onion, we would focus on the data element and the automation, and then obviously the Growth Genie focuses on the cadences and the building of cadences that engage. Our experience has been is that if you have the data and the automation, it's great, but if you don't have the quality cadences, you're not going to get you're not going to get the cadences to work effectively, and vice versa. You can have a great cadence, but if you don't have the data, it won't work. So this holistically works very well hand in hand. Okay, so to cover the first of those is in relation to the data. So from a Lead Onion perspective, we are a sort of a data buyer intent driven platform. So next slide, Rebecca, sorry. Within the platform, and again, I'm not going to cover this in detail, but we basically have two accesses to data that can feed cadences automatically. So there's the ability to use a contact search facility with 60 million contact records, profiles, where you can go in and you can search by the contact company, the location type, quality of email, you can upload lists, etc. So you can build a full, very focused target list. But our primary mechanism to drive data is using what is entitled buyer intent. So within Lead Onion, we have 17 different intent sources, which is basically picking up different buying signals across different intent sources and prioritizing those within the platform. So if you can imagine that on the next slide, Rebecca, that the intent signals really across the spectrum. You can have social intent signals, which are somebody's researching your competitors, somebody's looking for a keyword, somebody's looking or going to events. Then you have public, where people are making announcements, they're hiring, they're making an investment. And then you have topic, where people are consuming topic in relation to a topic that may be relevant to your business, and that topic consumption is surging. And then you have the review, which is somebody going to second party intent, the likes of G2. And then you have first party intent, which is going to your website. So within Lead Onion, what we can do is basically moving from low intent through to high intent. We aggregate all of those intent signals and then basically aggregate them and build a profile on a score that you can then push into cadences to then really target the people that you're going to, that then you set up the sales cadences for. Okay, so that was just a very high. Then Michael, if I hand over to you now. So guys, that's at the sort of the data layer of how you can feed cadences, but the majority of the webinar this afternoon is based around, from Michael's perspective, of how you build quality engaging cadences that you can feed this data into.
Perfect.
Okay,
yeah, I think it's Good place to start, Michael, is actually what we're going to be talking about is before you even write a cadence, you need to think about what's your ideal customer profile, and obviously you need data that's matched to that. Go to the next slide, please, Rebecca. So just before we kind of get into the weeds a bit, just in case there's anyone here that didn't understand kind of what a cadence is, essentially it's the touch points that you're going to use in order to get someone's attention and start a sales conversation with them. Now, this could be phone calls, this could be LinkedIn messages, this could be emails, or even things like videos, voice notes that we're going to be talking about later. What we recommend is using all of these things together, because you're going to have different types of people. Some people pick up the phone, other people respond to emails, other people are very active on LinkedIn. So you want to try and use all of these together. Next slide. Now, this goes back into what Michael was talking about with the data, which is that the data part and the quality of the messaging is actually totally related, because what you want to do is target a niche ideal customer profile. So rather than saying we sell to everyone, right? And even if you do have a very broad ideal customer profile, you want to narrow down and pick a specific segment, because what happens if you do that is you can create messaging that's highly targeted to that. And then the person that receives your message is saying, hey, we speak, he understands us because he's talking about the pain points that I have. So that's really important. Next slide. So when it comes to the ideal customer profile, there's three things that we generally look at. So before you even write a cadence, when you're thinking about who am I going to target, think about these three things. So the first thing is the job title. That's probably the most obvious one. In our case, we sell to three different types of job titles: CEOs, sales leaders, marketing leaders. So we're going to have different cadences for each of those job titles. Then think about the industries. So I'm going to come back onto this later, whether it's software, logistics, etc. They've obviously got different trends, different things happening. And then the triggers, this is where something like Lead Onion comes into play. Like if they're hiring a particular position, if they've raised a round of funding, if they're using a particular type of technology that you integrate with, you can use a tool like Lead Onion to identify that and say, hey, I noticed this about your company. And that's information, again, you can use in your messaging that makes your messaging more personalized. Now, going back to one of the points before about verticals, I wanted to talk about case studies, because when you build out your ideal customer profile, what I recommend in terms of verticals, target verticals and industries where you've got case studies, because then those case studies are going to be relevant to the people that you're talking about, right? So essentially a case study, I like to think of it as a customer story. And if you look at like a film, for example, most films have like a hero and a villain. So you need to think about what are the villains in the case studies, right? What were the business challenges that that company was facing before they worked with you? And how did you help them solve it? How did you then become the hero of that story? Try to be specific as well. So rather than saying, we help this company with lead generation, or we help them with sales training, what are like the specific outcomes? We help reduce their no-show rate by 25% on sales meetings. That could be something we'd say. But yeah, think about what are those statistics that are important. And then the last point is what I said, target companies similar to the ones you have case studies with, because it's going to be much easier to have conversations with them. Now at Growth Genie, some of you listening may have already seen this, but we essentially, our most popular bit of content is this ultimate outbound sales cadence that has 30 touches. Now, a lot of people are like, wow, this is a crazy amount of touches, but essentially 10 to 15 calls, 6 to 8 LinkedIn messages, and 6 to 8 emails. Now, we go to the next slide here. Often the reaction that we get is like, that's crazy. Like, how can you have so many touches? You're like spamming people. But there's data behind this. And two, we're not advocating spamming because of what we talked about before, having a very niche ideal customer profile. We're actually talking about having very thoughtful messaging. And the way I see it, I would rather contact 100 leads 30 times than contact like 1,000 leads 10 times. Because you want to essentially do a lot of touch points on each. And then if you look at the data, the average connect rate for a cold call is 5% nowadays. That basically means 1 in 20 people that you're going to call, someone's going to pick up who's not the gatekeeper and is the right person. So that's 5%. So that it doesn't mean you shouldn't make cold calls. Cold calls are still great if you get people to answer, but it's becoming more difficult to get hold of people. The average open rate on a cold email is 20%. I think 10 years ago it was 30%. So it's actually going down by like 1% every year. But again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't use emails, but it just means people get more emails than ever before. It's difficult to get hold of them on email. And then the average connection request acceptance rate on LinkedIn is 30%. So that's like less than 1 in 3 people, if they don't know you're going to accept your connection request. So again, it just shows the value of like high touch. So we've established you need a lot of touch points, but you may be thinking, okay, what do we need in our messaging? Like, what are we going to write? So that's what we're going to come on to now. So first thing I wanted to talk about was actually the call to action. So one of the biggest things in sales is standing out from everyone else. Now, I get a lot of sales emails, but also, I coach and train a lot of salespeople who show me their emails. Now, what 95% of salespeople do is say, do you have 15 minutes for a sales meeting? Now, when you're doing outbound, you haven't earned that because they don't know who you are. So what's a softer ask is to ask for someone's interest. And Gong did a study that was based on 500,000 cold sales emails. And what they found is if you ask for interest, like interested in learning more, versus asking for 15 minutes, you got twice as many responses. And psychologically, it's because if you're like a busy C-level director person, you've got a finite amount of time, but you've got an infinite amount of interest. So that's why on a psychological level, this works well. So what I wanted to do here was break down an email. So if we go back to the 30-day cadence, like in the first day, you would connect with them on LinkedIn, you would call them. As we talked about before, most people won't answer the phone. So then you're going to write a personalized email. So I wanted to break down the elements of a personalized email. And one of the things to note on this is actually that you can use this structure in calls as well, right? Or LinkedIn messages. So this structure I'm going to be talking about is actually something you can apply to other channels, right? In terms of like the trigger, pain, and the interest call to action. So I'm going to break this down step by step. So Tim's SDRs, one, you want your subject lines to be short, it's 2 words, and then you want to think about putting the company name or the first name in there. First line, something I says, this is where your trigger event comes in. So this is something that's happening to them, and try to include the word you and your as much as possible rather than we and us. So in our case here, Tim noticed you're hiring SDRs. The next line should be about a pain point, right? So in our case, it can take up to 4 months before an SDR is fully productive. And then I've put at a SaaS company because I'm targeting a SaaS company here, so making it relevant to them. And then I've got the interest call to action, interested in a Playbook template that can help you onboard new hires twice as fast. Now, what you notice here, again, I'm not even talking about sales consulting. I'm actually talking about a Playbook template. So I'm trying to give something away for free, which incorporates the rule of reciprocity, right? Because I know if I can give them something valuable first, and if they say, yes, I do want that Playbook template, then it's going to be easy for me to start a sales conversation with them. And it's still something that can easily turn into a sales conversation for us because we write Playbook templates, right? So have a think about what's some content that I can give away that builds that rapport, but then I can also turn into a sales conversation afterwards. Next slide. Now, this is where I recommend like automation tools, Lean Onion, which is when you write a personalized first email, a big mistake that a lot of salespeople make is they'll either not follow up on that email, or they'll follow up, but they'll write another like really long email. What you want to do is write a bump message. The reason you want to write a bump message is that often people are out of office, they're on vacation, they're busy with internal matters, and they don't even see your email, or they see your email, but they saw it and then they get distracted by something else. So what you want to do is just create one line to the email, and it should be a reply to the previous email, and just say any interest in, and then whatever that last email was. It could be any feedback, any interest. There's lots of ways of doing this. So in this case, on the last email, it would be any interest in that Playbook template for your new hires. What's interesting here is we've seen this happen a lot of times where actually the response on the second automated email is higher than that first personalized email, just because, as I said, they may have been out of office or they may have seen it. And when they see the second message, they're like, oh, I forgot to reply to this. So yeah, I really recommend doing these bump emails. Yeah, this is pretty much everything we just talked about around like the importance of the bump, and just that people are busy, right? So like the follow-up, out of all the sales people that I coach, often the ones that are most successful are the people that are most persistent. A lot of people have very good messaging, but it's about how persistent are you to get in front of people. This is a slightly longer email. This relates to the case study that I talked about. So here we're going to go less a content giveaway and more we're going to talk about case studies. So I'm going to break this down step by step again. The subject line, market stirs reply rate. So there's a couple of things. I'll put the company name in this time. I've also put reply rate because if you're in marketing or sales or that's something you're looking at, you can see it's short again. It's three words. The trigger event I've used this time is someone's new in their role. That's another trigger event I really recommend because people who are new in their role are often looking to make an impact. If you're a head of sales, maybe trying to impress a CEO, say if you're a head of marketing, head of IT, whatever it is. So that's a thing I recommend looking at. And then again, the pain point. So the pain point I've used here is since you announced the job change, you must have been bombarded with spam on email and LinkedIn. Imagine how difficult it is for SDR to break through all that noise and contact people like yourself. Now, if you're thinking about, I don't know how to get the pain points, like how do I understand the pain points of our ideal customers? Speak to your customer success team. If you're an SDR, speak to your sales team. And even from your job, the more you're having conversations, if you're hearing a pain point over and over again, that's the pain point you want to talk about in your email. And then finally, again, we got that interest call to action. This is where the case study comes in. So interested in learning how our playbooks help demand Zen's SDR 3 times their reply rate on LinkedIn. So here, rather than asking for interest in a piece of content, I'm asking for interest in a case study. Now, again, so we've basically got 4 emails. Now this 4th email now is the same format as before, but I'm just asking for interest in that case study. Any interest in seeing how demand Zen 3 times their reply rate? So it's exactly the same formula with the bump. And again, if you send like a video, voice note, etc., you can do those bumps on that as well. So going on to that subject, videos, voice notes. So because of email automation, which is great. I've been talking about bump emails, so like using email automation, but email automation is a double-edged sword. What it means is that if you're like a C-level decision maker, you're getting hundreds of sales emails a week, more than ever before. So it's becoming more difficult to stand out, right? Now, here are a few channels that are going to help you stand out, and I'm going to explain why. So one is video. I recommend using tools like Vidyard, who are partners of ours, and essentially what Vidyard lets you do. One is take a video, which you can send to someone. Now, a lot of people just take a selfie video, which I don't recommend. I recommend sharing screen on the website, right? So if we go back to the trigger events, if you know that a company's hiring a particular job role or went through a merger and acquisition, you could share screen on their website and say, hey, I noticed this about your company. So that's something I recommend in a video. Voice notes, so this is on LinkedIn. Basically, if you're a first connection with someone on LinkedIn, you can actually send them a voice note. We see this gets about 4 times the response rate versus a written message. And again, I speak to C-level people all the time, and they tell me, "Oh, I didn't even know you could send a voice note." Right? They've never received one, and they've probably received thousands of LinkedIn pictures before. And then SMS, you have to be a little bit careful with SMS because there are certain regulations for like people you've never spoken to before. They haven't given you permission. But say you meet someone at an event and they've ticked a box and you've kind of been added, they've been added to your list. You can send them an SMS, and the average open rate for a cold SMS is 90% versus like 20% for an email. So recommend playing around with SMS too. Now, like I said before, the trigger, pain point, interest, call to action is a general formula we recommend, and then the bump message. And again, you can use that on LinkedIn, you can use that on calls as well. But when it comes to the last touch email, we go for a slightly different approach. Now, a lot of people on last touch do what they call a breakup email. We don't recommend the breakup email because we think it's a little bit false, because normally you're going to contact those people 2 months later. If they don't reply to you, it's not they're not interested. They may have just been busy or it's not the right time. So you're going to contact them again in 2 months. So in the meantime, what we recommend is to do a feedback email and just say, hey, as your whatever persona you're reaching out to, in our case, sales leaders, have a quick favor to ask, do you mind sharing some feedback about my email outreach? There's 3 things that can happen. One is, of course, they don't respond, which is the most typical in sales. 2 is they actually give you feedback which is great because you can learn from your ideal customer. Or 3, sometimes they actually like the humble approach. So we can go on to the next slide. Now, this is actually a real email that I sent out, and like a real response where this is a chief revenue officer who said, "I obsess with outreach sequence, so happy to discuss." And then he's even put, "PS, I guess this email proves a please help approach can work." Essentially, it's just being different from other salespeople and saying, "Look, you're someone important who I respect. I would love your feedback on this." And this was actually someone that led to being one of our highest paying customers last year, and it just came from that feedback email. So this is something I really recommend doing as well. Now, haven't talked too much about calling. As I said, you can use that structure with like triggers on calling as well. So if you're doing a cold call, you could say, "Hey, notice you're hiring SDRs, wanted to ask you some questions about that." But another way to use calls as well as doing cold calls is if you actually get a reply. One of the problem with Cadences is the way most tools are built is like the cadence is set just to get a reply, but then often I speak to salespeople that are not sure what to do when you get the reply. The great thing about if you get an email reply, this is a little trick, often their phone number is in the signature, so look out for that. So actually in this case, when Mike sent me this email, I blocked out his number here so you don't all call him, but I saw his number was in the signature and I gave him a call and I was able to book the meeting that way, right? This was an easy one. Even on email, he may have done it, but it was quicker. I could also qualify him. I could have a conversation with him. So if you get an email from someone in a cadence, recommend calling them straight away. We go on to the next slide. Now, with replies on emails as well, not everyone's going to be like Mike. He may have emails with like objections, right? So this is another example of someone that said to me, "Hey, this sounds interesting, but I want to hire a head of BDR, and then we will review." Now, when it comes to objection handling, the thing we recommend is not to overcome objections and try and have a fight with someone about an objection, but it's to try and understand the objection and what they're really trying to say with the objection. The best way to do that is through asking questions, right? So in this case, the questions I wanted to ask was, okay, what are you looking for in that head of BDR? How long is it going to take to train, ramp them up, etc.? So what I did, I picked up the phone, Vincent picked up, and I asked those questions on a call, and I was actually able to then book a meeting with him. And again, this person became a customer. So again, if you're getting objections by email or LinkedIn, try and call that person straight away. Now, so let's just imagine you've used a lot of these tactics. Maybe you get like 5-10 meetings from your cadence. That's brilliant. Now, I imagine most of the people who are listening here are working in B2B sales. If you work in B2B sales, your job's not over when one person says, "Hey, that's great, let's have a meeting." You want to try and get them to invite as many people as possible to that first meeting. So you want to ask, "Oh, who else is typically involved in our case with your SDR team? Does marketing manage them? Does sales manage them, right? Or who else would be offended if they weren't like part of this conversation?" So try and get as many stakeholders as possible to that first meeting. And then related to account-based sales as well, B2B, like we're talking about, just going to throw out one last instance. Apart from the voice notes, I haven't talked that much about LinkedIn. But let's imagine you have a conversation with someone. So say in our case, I call a head of sales and they say, "Hey, actually speak to the head of marketing or the CEO," because they're running the SDR team at the moment. What I want to do is then send a connection request to that person and drop the person's name. So, "Hey, had an interesting conversation with your colleague Teresa. It'd be great to connect her." The way I describe a LinkedIn connection request is the same as a subject line of an email. You just want to keep it short. You just want to get their attention and that they accept your connection request, because then you're in their network and you can kind of contact them as many times as you want. So just keep your LinkedIn connection requests short and simple. And yeah, I think that's, I don't, Rebecca, if you can go to the next slide. I think that's the last, yeah, that's the last one. So that's all my tips for kind of how to build the messaging for those cadences. Over to you, Michael.
Excellent. Cheers, Michael. Okay. So guys, we said the first was get the data, that it's targeted, it's specific. The quality cadence is that the messaging is clear, it's consistent. Then the third component then, guys, is the ability to use automation. And this means then you can do it at scale. It can be consistent, standardized across everybody. So next slide, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind. So within Lead Onion, guys, if you can see here what we do on the left-hand side with, I was mentioning earlier on the data, is that we bring in the 17 sources of intent data across social profile. We prioritize those. Then we go off and we, using the target personas in the auto reveal, we can reveal the contents relevant. As Michael was saying, is that you need to know this type of industry and the person specifically you're going for. So you can automatically reveal those individuals and so you can target them. And then the piece to talk about now is the automation piece, which then is the rules based in relation to being able to put those onto separate cadences specific to their industry or their title, etc. So it's very rules based. And then from there within Lead Onion, we can create the cadence and build the cadence and build it the way Michael has said, multiple touch points across email, phone, LinkedIn. And then from there, the final piece is then once you find the successful one, i.e. the one that you get as to a demo or you get to a close, the ability to go back and say, right, give me 100 more of that type that then I can add to my cadence so it becomes self-fulfilling and learning. Okay, so next slide, Rebecca. So within that, the automation layer in our perspective, guys, consists of two things, what we call a workflow, which is really the rules based of if you have a lot of data. So for example, coming through, if you've got 15, 17 sources of intent data, or you're using the contact search and you've got multiple searches, those may be at different stages of their journey, and they also may be different levels of intent. So we would have, this is just an example of one we use with a customer, it's the sort of top of the funnel, you know, this is very loose intent, gets added to one type of cadence, it's more generic. Then you have the middle of the funnel, which is clearly they're showing interest in, they're searching for this topic, or they've come to our website, or they visited our site in G2, they go on to another cadence. So as Michael was saying, that gives the ability then to be able to tailor the messaging within the cadence very specifically to the action and the individual that is looking for it. And then within that as well, that feeds into what we call a cadence builder. And the cadence builder is taking really everything Michael has said, but making it rules based. So you set up on day one, we will make a phone call. On day two, we'll send a LinkedIn message. This is what it is. And then that gives the ability to be able to do it at scale and consistency standard, et cetera, and move people automatically through the individual cadence. Okay. So Rebecca, I'm going to take the screen if that's okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can you see there, guys?
Yep.
Yep. Is the screen sharing?
Yep.
Yep. So this guys, just from a Lead Onion point of view, I'm going to focus on the cadences, but this is an example of a dashboard that would show the intent coming through, the companies found each day who are showing that intent, but then more importantly, the prospects revealed within your target persona within that, within those companies. And then you can see exactly what type of source and what industries, et cetera, across all of these. And then the other thing, again, to be hyper targeted is we also have a what's called surge, and surge gives you the ability to be able to identify that people may be given indicators of intent, but across multiple different types. So it gives the ability to be able to say that if somebody is showing an investment, but they're also going to, so for example, here, this is somebody who's attending a conference, but at the same time is hiring for a specific roles. And we've also got previous intent outside of the period. So you're focused on the last 30 days, and then you can start seeing the intent signals growing over time. So for example, attending a conference or visiting G2, there's a strong one, visited the category or the competitor or came to your website. So the surge basically takes the 17 sources and then combines them and then starts to look for the ones that are really, really showing intent. On the search facility, again, just to tie into the data earlier, it gives the ability to be able to fully search. You know, you can upload a lookalike audience. That is, these are people we've converted before. Go and find me more people who look like that. Or if you want the ability to go in and just do a search, you can create a search that effectively, so rather the intent led, If you want to go in and find somebody by job title or location or company or technology, you can build a full list here and go and find the data. So once we have the data, as I was saying, we push it through to the workflow. I won't go into the workflow, but the workflows effectively are rules-based that takes all of the data and then pushes it through to the respective areas within the cadences, so you can really target at scale the different types of cadences and the different types of, and I'll just show an example. These are the different types of rules-based workflows and journeys to be able to get the data across multiple different cadences. So to tie into what Michael was saying there earlier, once you want to build a cadence, and you've got the content, you've got the data, the automation can build a very specific and targeted cadence. So if you want to start a cadence, you basically can put in the title. You can put in what is the cadence goal. So if it's B2B, it's maybe to set a demo or get a conversation going. You can set a demo, you can give it an owner, you can give it a type. And then this is where, to be able to use cadences at scale, you can start putting in some of the step settings. So for what Michael was saying is, if you do send somebody an email and they unsubscribe, you can then put in a rule that says, okay, if they unsubscribe, remove them from email steps going forward. So you don't keep sending emails after. If somebody opts out of a call, you can either remove them or close them completely. If somebody doesn't have a phone number, remove them from those call steps so it doesn't appear all the time. You can have a delivery schedule, only send in weekends, and if it's a time zone, send in prospects time zone only. You can, if it's a success, so your cadence is designed to get an outcome, a call to action, which either could be a conversation started or a demo. So you can decide then, once it gets marked as a success, then what do I do? Do I send it to a sales pipeline, or do I close it out or add it to another cadence? At the end of a cadence, you can define what you want to do. So one day after the end of the cadence, I want to mark it as finished. You can throttle it. So again, one of the things with cadences is that, you know, there is a capacity level. So you can set what that capacity is from a cadence. Is we only want to have 100 prospects at any time on a cadence, and the number per day is the maximum is 50. So you can manage the outbound, and then you can have automatic steps and cadence success parameters, etc. So you can measure the success of a cadence. So once you've done that, then this is just following on what Michael was saying earlier. You know, it's number of steps over what period and what percentage is automated. So if you want to add a cadence step, and again here, as Michael was saying, you can have emails, basic, video, or automated. You can have phone calls, you can have LinkedIn, or you can have another activity, which could be do research, etc. So this is really to set up the rules that, you know, the SDRs or BDRs would follow in relation to once you set up a cadence. So for example, if you set up a basic email cadence, so this would be on day one, we want to send a basic email. You click on here, and then this would be, the activity would be email one. The subject line, as Michael was saying earlier, needs to be something short. Great if it can be personalized, but this needs to be the header, or the call to action, and then here you can put in your text. Now we work with Michael to really design these types of cadence or templates. So you can insert a template, and then that template then is effectively pre-populated with what we know works. So it's personalized. I came across, as Michael said, your business name, which is tied to the industry, etc., your pain point, and then your call to action or your interest post. So once you have that, you can basically save that as add the step, and then that becomes your step one. And then effectively, then you can say on day, say 2, that's when we want to do the first phone call. So we say day 2, we will do a phone call, no voicemail, add next. And again, you can say phone call 2. And then again, you can add the script in here. So if you want the guys, or you have a standard script that you know works, here's a phone-based script. You can then again standardize that. So again, it takes that, the ability to go off script or whatever, you can basically put in here the script that should be used for the phone call, and then that's day 2. And it's effectively, guys, just keep adding steps. So if then on day 3 we wanted to do the LinkedIn connection, you can then say here, LinkedIn connect, etc., and then put in your post for the LinkedIn connection, and then you just connect and then use that message. So effectively, you can keep building this, and it just builds the rules base for the cadences to follow. So I think it just, if we take one, I'll just save that as a draft. Okay. So to show an active one. So guys, again, just showing the connection. So if I show here in the planner, then this would be an example of a rules-based, a long cadence. So on day 1 you do these 4 steps, and day 2 these 3, day 5, day 8, day 9. So as Michael was saying, that's probably 20 touch points over 22 days across the different mechanisms. So you can set that up, set the rules, etc. For ourselves, again, tying it into the data, we have multiple different types of cadences specific to the, so for example, for ourselves, Bombora would be a competitor. So we can see if somebody is searching for that topic, and then we have a cadence built specifically to that topic. If we go in and look at that, and again, tying into what Michael was saying, is that the first, the first email invariably would be based around, personalizing it and making it customizable. So here we would call that manual intervention. So the email is already built. It will default in the first name, the business name, the hi the user. But here, this is where Michael was saying in your first message, it is to be, you insert here the topic that they were searching, and then we go and take a copy of that to show that it is relevant and it's personalized in relation to what they were looking, and then add a video as well. So that would be the first email. And then after that, the next ones then would be more of the bump ones and the automated emails following up with good quality content, and also further on. The cadences that we would use don't ask for anything probably until the 5th or 6th. It really just tries to build interest, tries to give away content, etc. And we can see here just a simple, it's the simple step: email, email, phone, email, LinkedIn connection, etc. Okay. Okay. I think the final thing to note from a cadence again is it is trying to get a result, as Michael was saying. So the emails that are going one-to-one, you want to be able to track effectively, how many were sent, how many got opened, and how many got clicked over time, and then be able to then focus on the opens and the click. So you can have these people constantly moving through, but it's trying to move it from third party sort of data into first party click, where somebody who has opened the email or clicked on the email, you can see very effectively here who's opened it. And then again, some of our clients would use it that when they click, this is the time that I now phone them. So you now phone them directly once and only that they've opened an email directly from the cadence, which is based on intent or directly somebody that we wish to sell to. Okay. Okay. So just to wrap up on that, as I say, then, sorry, Rebecca, can we open it to questions, or is there any questions, anybody?
I don't think we've got any in at the minute, unless anyone has any they want to add now.
Okay. Michael, is there anything you would add to that?
No, yeah, I think Lead Onion's a good tool to build these cadences, and ties into a lot of what we talked about around the look at the find trigger events using something like Lead Onion, whether a company's hiring, they're using a particular piece of software, and then mention that's a way of making your messaging more personalized. And I said that's not just on emails, right? You could give someone a cold call and you say, hey, notice you opened a new office, notice you are hiring this position, and it makes that cold call a bit warmer. So it's something you can use across different forms of communication. Perfect.
Aaron, the question you've asked in relation to how do you find your data on prospects and how fresh is it? As I was showing on the from a Lead Onion perspective, the two ways we find the data is, as I say, through intent. That effectively is picking up multiple, as I say, multiple signals through website tracking, through social tracking to see if somebody is going to an event. The how fresh of it, this is effectively real time. So the intent signals come through effectively through the day, every day in real time. So you can see here for our social, you have literally within probably a couple of minutes ago, it keeps coming in through the day. So 13 minutes ago, we got a trigger that this company, somebody in it was indicating they were going to CyberSec or to Salesforce World. Or here again, we have a real-time intent trigger that will show you in real time the intent coming through from each of the individual sources. So again, each of these would be real time. Okay, the emails and the phone numbers. We are partnered with a company that's, you know, probably one of the biggest in the UK specifically. The emails and the phone numbers we reckon are probably 90% plus in relation to validated. And we also have a policy as well, guys. If the emails or the phone numbers don't work, we will reimburse you. So the quality we find on most of ours probably at the minute is 90% plus, and again it is real time on the searches. So if that answers it, Aaron, or we can pick that up separately and I can show you, but everything within it is verified. Everything is GDPR compliant as well. Nicola, right across the board, it is UK, US, Ireland, the continent, India. It varies. There's a good base in Asia as well, but most primarily probably Europe, UK, US. Nicola or Nicholas, was there any specific country you were looking for or region? Okay. After this, Nicola, I will check that for you and give you or I'll do it now. Sorry, just 2 seconds. Yeah, so test. Yeah, sorry, Nicholas, I'll do that afterwards and send it specifically. Sorry if I may. Okay, great. Okay, so any other questions, guys? Nope, great. So I'd like to, guys, just as a wrap up for today, Michael, thank you very much for your participation. After the call here, guys, we'll send out the recording if anybody wants it. We've also created a sales playbook which covers most of what we've also discussed, but also from Michael's perspective, all of the guidance in relation to how to build a really good quality cadence, the main sort of touch points, etc., and then also combined with ourselves in relation to the data and the automation. But we'll send that effectively after the call.
Cheers, Michael. Cheers, everyone that joined today.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate it. Okay. Thanks, guys. So somebody. Perfect. Okay. Cheers, Michael.